Hi viewers, welcome to our channel. And today we would like to present how we increase the farmers' income by 185% while reducing the production cost by 47%. Now, our ultimate goal was more crops, more yield, more income with less inputs, using limited water resources under the degrading environments. And we would like to go through this with you. So it's not easy to increase the production that can give income by over 195% without doing something and without following certain steps. So in this presentation, we are going to show you various steps that we went through in order to achieve our goal. So we kindly ask you to subscribe and also to remain throughout the presentation so that you understand how we achieved this. You know, the idea of giving this presentation is to share with you our experience and knowledge on how to increase the production and income from your farm. You know, I accept that most people really are interested in politics, entertainments, and also in societal issues, which normally dominate in our social media platform. But I request you today, you share with that interest, and we look at also the food we are eating and the income we are getting from our farms. This is also very important. And therefore, I plead with you to be with me throughout the presentation. Now, before we achieved what we achieved, there was questions. And these questions, we have to look for the answers. And the answers is the one which led to the success. Now, the first question that we ask ourselves is, what is the cluster-specific on-farm biophysical constraints that limit long-term production? You have to identify the biophysical constraints within the farm that actually limit the production so that you can formulate appropriate technology or approaches to eliminate it. So the production you are going to get will increase if you reduce the constraints. Now, the second question that we have to address is, how is land currently used and managed, and what will happen if the current production system remains unchanged? And also, what will happen if the production system does not respond to the degrading environment? So these are the questions that we would like. The third one is, what improvement of land is physically possible, economically viable, and socially acceptable? So let us look at how we address the question by first doing what? We have to look at the baseline, because the answer to this question is followed through steps. There are various steps that we have followed in order to answer those questions. And those questions are going to be the basis of formulating appropriate technologies to improve the production. So the first step was to have baseline survey. It is to look at what do you have on the baseline. Because when you are trying to bring technology to improve the farm production, you must have baseline. And this is what we go wrong, because people don't know detailed analysis of what is actually the environmental condition, social conditions, and biophysical constraints that limit the production. So that step actually involved understanding the general environmental conditions of the project area, then followed by determining the spatial extent, yani what is the magnitude of the area where you are going to deal with, because you want to take stock of what is on the ground so that you can be able to to target the constraint properly. The third activity was to look at the soil types. We are dealing in agriculture, we deal with soils. So you have to know the soils we are dealing with, the crops which are currently grown on that particular soil, and also the agricultural inputs in relation to the prevailing weather conditions. Then the second step was participatory delineation of the project area. And that we did by involving the stakeholders, because it is participatory and we had to do it together with the people on the ground, with the extension people, the farmers, the representative, so that now we do what? We map the land units into clusters. And then we identify the land use, water, and fertilizer inputs, as well as management system for each of those clusters delineated. So we also had to do the mapping and also to educate farmers on how to harvest the water and then implement those water harvesting technologies which were appropriate to those particular clusters. Now, this we did through making furrows or intercepting runoff water and demonstrating how that could be done and how that could be directed into the fields. And the step 3 was actually participatory implementation by promoting the prescribed interventions and also monitoring and evaluating the performance of the cluster-specific interventions that are prescribed. And also, we try to educate farmers and demonstrate to them or illustrate to them the technology, whether it is water harvesting technology, soil fertility management technologies, we demonstrate so that they can go and implement in their farms. Because the idea was to increase on-farm production by eliminating on-farm biophysical constraints that limit the current production. Now, the starting point was to have baseline status, which were in terms of different clusters of soil, production units, and their spatial magnitudes. So we came up with the clusters. Cluster 1 was mainly grazing, and each cluster had different soil characteristics, their different soil quality, and different management strategies. Now, cluster 2 was structurally degrading soils. Then cluster 3 was degrading with high sodium concentrations, which was causing soil structural issues. Then cluster 3 was severely degrading with high sodium and high salt concentration. Then cluster 5 was loose, stratified, and strongly leached soils. So having known this structure, what was actually production system in each of those clusters, so that now we could bring in our strategies and we have baseline information against which we will measure the relative degree of change that were adopted by farmers upon introduction of our technologies. So what we did was to delineate those clusters into the agricultural landscape, which are being farmed by the farmers. And you can see different clusters have got different colors and also different management requirements, because each clusters of soil differ from any other adjoining clusters to an extent that it will respond differently to land use and management. I want you to mark that one seriously, because you are talking about different clusters on agricultural landscape. What is the implication in terms of management requirement? So that you don't come up with blanket technologies, but you come up with a technology which are cluster oriented, so that each technology is addressing specific issues identified in each of those clusters. We are targeting the efficient production system. Now, I want you to understand that for any particular crop, certain cluster of soil is better suited than others. So the efficiency is achieved by matching the requirement of different crops with the land quality attributes of different clusters. Each cluster in turn to arrive at the cluster which yields the greatest production at the least cost and least environmental degradation. Now, each cluster is essentially a soil type. Like cluster 1, you have soil with a high level of nutrients. You can see even the dark color on the topsoil showing that there is high organic matter. And you see, as you have seen in that cluster in the map, the area was left for grazing and was fertile and was not cultivated. So this is cluster C1. Cluster C2 is a soil cluster, which is generally moderately degrading with high sodium concentration. Then you have cluster C3, which is having a lot of sodium and also degrading with actually gallium forming. And then cluster C3, you can see its even color shows that it has high concentration of salt and sodium. And this actually causes collapse of soil structure. And that is cluster C4, which is severely degraded. Now, cluster C5 is a cluster with low organic matter content, is loose, strongly leached, friable, and this cluster is having very low nutrient status. So you can see different type of soils under different clusters, showing that though each cluster has got different requirements in terms of management in relation to different crops. So what did you find out in the baseline? In the baseline, you see, we have two major columns. The first one is the current production system, and then the second column is recommended systems. Now, in under cluster C1, you see the current production system is grazing. Management is fallow. So the farmer is not using it for production, it is fallow. And then the recommended system, that is crop, is tomatoes, and then to add with compost as a management requirement. So that is cluster C1. If you come to cluster C3, under current production system, you have maize under soils with cemented hard pan. That is the biophysical constraint of cluster C2. You can see it is not the same as in cluster C1, because in cluster C2, you have a hard pan, which is cemented, and you can see the farmer is using maize in that cluster and is applying 4 kilograms per hectare of DAP. Now the recommended crops is maize, but this time round, intercropped with groundnuts. So that is recommended. The management which is recommended under cluster C2 is compost plus subsoiling. Why subsoiling? Is to remove the hard pan and also the appropriate water scheduling. Now in cluster C3, currently it's under onions and it's moderately degrading with a high sodium concentration. The farmer is still applying 4 kilograms per acre of DAP, but what we recommended is watermelon, and management is 5 tons per acre of well-decomposed manure, plus what we call platinum non-salt. And platinum non-salt is to reduce sodium, which is toxic to the plant as a biophysical constraint, and water scheduling. Now, cluster C4 is currently under onions and is severely degrading with the gully formation. The farmer is still applying 400 kilograms per acre of DAP. And what we recommended here is salt-tolerant grass, and then composting and water conservation. Those are the recommendations that we recommended for this cluster C4. And then cluster C5 is maize, other stratified and strong hilly soils. The farmer is still applying 4 kilograms per acre of DAP. What recommended in this cluster is butternut, and also 0 tillage and 5 tons per acre of manure, and 100 kilograms of DAP and water scheduling. Now you can see, under the current practices, the farmer is applying the same input across different clusters, ignoring their differences in management requirement in terms of crops and also input. So what we are trying to help farmers to come out is uniform application, blanket application to different clusters requiring different management systems, and that actually is efficient. So we want to move the farmer from inefficient production system to efficient production system. And in that case, we'll be able to improve the production. Now, what happened? You see, the production increased, for example, from 42 kilograms per hectare to 80 tons per acre of tomatoes in class C1. In class C3, there was an increase, the production was 28 tons per hectare. Now coming to the class C3 and class C5, maize production increased from 20 to 50 bags per hectare. Groundnut was 50 bags per hectare. Now in class C4, where we recommended the salt-tolerant grass for improved milk production, the milk production increased from 2.5 liters to 5 liters per cow upon establishing the salt-tolerant grass. Now, as you can see, the grass performed very well, and the soil also improved when we put them under grass as opposed to the current production system. Now, you can see the grass got established, and we actually improved the control grazing, and milk production improved accordingly. You can even see the gully formation was stabilized because you can see the grass is actually reducing the gully formation. Now let's look at the figures and facts. We have told you the facts upon implementation of our recommended practices, but now you have figures. The figures, you can see in C1, where we recommended tomatoes, we got a production increase in income from $19,660 per hectare to $53,150 US dollars per hectare. The cost got reduced from $11,000 US dollars per hectare to $5,250. That is in cluster C1. Now cluster C2, under maize production and groundnut, we increased the income from 156 US dollars to 2,148 US dollars per hectare. The cost will remain the same. Now in cluster C3, where the farmer was growing onions, where we changed to watermelon, the income increased from 500 US dollars to 4,468 US dollars. Now, milk production increased from 2.5 liters to 5 liters per cow. Now, for cluster C5, butternut increased from 2,550 US dollars to 4,101 US dollars. In overall totals, the income increased from 22,366 US dollars to 63,867 US dollars. The cost got reduced from 12,525 to 6,640. Now, the income increase from 22,366 to 16,867 was 185%. Now, the cost of production was reduced by 47%. That is 12,525 to 6,640. So you can see that in overall, we increase the production, we increase the income by 195%, while the cost reduced by 47%. So we are trying to recommend that you continue to be with us, because we shall be giving you updates, more information, more technologies, and how to make efficient, climate-smart agriculture. Thank you for listening to now. Please just subscribe, and we continue together. Thank you.